I'm just gonna jump right in. So to create our beaded corn today, we're gonna start with our beading needle, and I have one strand of thread folded in half with a little knot tied at the end of it. If you're using a kit, I am using the darkest color of tan, but it doesn't really matter what color you use. So to start, I'm going to find my needle, poke a hole through the top of where my corn is going to be, and then pull my thread all the way through. Then I'm going to load up the length of my corn with some beads. I usually don't use patterns or make plans, so I kind of go at this intuitively. So I'm going to load up 10 beads on my needle and see where that starts. Oftentimes, if you were wanting to make like a wearable or a bag or earrings or something like that, you would use wire for beadwork, but in this case, since it's kind of just a decorative piece, embroidery thread will just work fine. So I've got 10 beads loaded up. I'm checking that out against my little corn pattern here, and it seems to be about perfect. So I'm just going to put 10 more beads on my needle, and then secure her down. I don't know what this little slow motion moment happened was, but so that's the perfect length of my corn. You don't want to keep it too tight because you want to leave space in the thread to tack it down. So I'm just gonna put my little beads back in my jar here so I don't litter. I am at a park. So I poke my needle through my canvas, pull my thread all the way through, and then I try and make my securing stitch just about right directly underneath where my row of beads is. Pull my needle through, and then making sure that it passes over my row of beads, poke it right back through that same hole, or as close as you can get it. And then once that's secure, it doesn't flop around, it kind of just stays nice and still on the canvas. If it were a longer row of beads, you might want to put some more securing stitches, but since it's just a little row of 20, that works just fine. So for these outer rows, they're a little bit shorter, so I'm only going to put 18 beads on my thread here. That way it gives it that kind of round corn cobby shape. I guess oval, not so much round. So I'm tacking that down, going to do my little security stitch as well, right off to the side, and then down through the center, making sure that my thread goes over my beads. Doing my little final row here. Side note, if you ever come across a bead that is too small to fit through the eye of the needle, just discard it. Don't put it back in your little thing, it'll just keep showing up. Toss it. So I've got my final row of beads here. I'm tacking that down. And then once I have this little security stitch here, that is my little ear of corn. So cute. To tie off in the back, I like to insert my needle under a recent stitch, pass my needle back through this loop that it creates, and that ties a little knot. Then you can just pass the needle through that knot a couple times to make sure that it's nice and tight, and that stitch ain't going nowhere, baby. Alright, now to get into the turkey work, which is this fun little frondy bit right here. You're going to want to start by pulling your needle through the back of your canvas. I usually would use a tool like my finger or a pen. I'm not at a desk right now, so I'm just going to use this twig that I found on the ground. Going back in through the hole that you just came out of and using your object as a tension keeper, basically. Just make a bunch of loose little loops, like so, wrapping around the stick. It's typically easier to maintain the same tension and in your loops when you're using an object like a pen or the end of a paintbrush. But just put as many little loops around your object as you want. And catching your thread up there on that little hook thing on the hoop is just part of the process. Now that you have your little loops, I'm about to make a grave error, so don't do what I'm doing. Before you cut these loops, tie off in the back. Warning, warning, don't do this. Tie off in the back before you cut the loops. But there you go. That's how you make the turkey work. This is me realizing I did not tie off in the first place and trying to save my work, but as soon as I flipped this over and pulled on my threads, they fell right out. So make sure that you tie off first and then clip your loops. But yeah, thank you so much for attending my class. Thank you for your patience waiting for this video. I really hope to see you all again in the future. Enjoy your day.